Very good afternoon, everyone. I, on behalf of PhD Chamber and my own, welcome you all to our wonderful session on MDR. This is fifth in the series, and the topic is Understanding ISO 13485 certification for medical devices. To take this session forward, I request Colonel Rajiv Bhargava to kindly moderate the session. So I would like to briefly introduce Colonel Bhargava. He is Associate Director at Munjal Institute for Global Manufacturing, Indian School of Business, Mohali. He has demonstrated history of working in the higher education industry. He is skilled in operations management, risk management, business development, organizational development, and cross-functional team leadership. He has varied interests to include mentoring startups and design thinking. He has authored a book and several articles in leading newspapers, and he is a business development professional with an MBA from ISB focused on strategy and finance. So I request Colonel Bhargava to kindly take the session forward, sir. Over to you. So you need to unmute.
Yeah, thank you, Rimneet. And it is my pleasure to have on the panel Professor Anil Kumar Gupta, Mr. Rajiv Nath, Dr. Minocha, and of course, Amneet and Rimneet are always part of this great organizing that they do. And Mahadevanji. Firstly, I must congratulate you for the fifth in the series. And as I am to understand, the capacity is 100, but there is a huge waiting line for people to come and attend this session.
And so we have already provided the YouTube link as well.
Yes.
Those who are unable to join, they can join online. And this is live session.
Yeah. And I must say, because you have been working so hard over the 5 MDRs and so the government decided that they will amend the Drug, Medical Devices and Cosmetic Bill Act 2022 because people have become so knowledgeable. And the government has also now, it was released on 8th of July. And now the government has asked, given 45 days to the audience to come up with comments and solutions and so on. And I'm confident that the audience or the people who have been attending these 5 sessions, they will be in a great place to make the right comments. I must say, since I have the new bill that is coming up, it is still in the formulative stage, is going to, besides talking about drugs, it is going to talk about manufacturers, definitions of medical devices, regulations for online pharmacies and medical devices, and also to create, as you may say, the cream on top of the cake. It is that the Medical Devices Technical Advisory Board is to be formed. So with all this great things happening, I feel this the MDR series that we are having is something which is definitely the right activity at the right time at the right place. So I congratulate PhD Chambers for going ahead with such a path-breaking measure. And now I come on to today's topic. See, as they say, there are a large number of industries, and there are 11. Basically, if you Google, you will find that there are 11 characteristics of various industries, which include labor, competition, and so many other things. But however, as far as the medical devices industry is concerned, there are 2 things which are paramount: safety and quality. Because a life, if it is once gone, it is never going to come back. And that is why this ISO 13485 has been developed. And today we are going to discuss a lot about it. The ISO 13485 is intended for any organization which is partially or fully involved in the medical device life cycle. And the requirements of this standard apply to organizations regardless of their size and regardless of their type, except where, of course, where it is explicitly stated. And it is meant to help medical device companies primarily the medical device manufacturers to set up a QMS, quality management system that demonstrates consistent design, development, production, storage, distribution, installation, and whatnot. So I feel for any medical device manufacturer, today's session, especially with the luminaries that we have, the knowledge that we have, I believe if or on the table right now, we'll be having more than say 100 years of experience. If I see everyone has got about 30 years of experience out here, and there are five of us, five of you. So there is a huge amount of experience which is here for tapping. And as Ramneet had told me and requested that there has been a lot of request from the audience that they want to have a large amount of time for Q&A because they seldom get an opportunity to have so many experts together. And so keeping that in mind, we have decided that, of course, we will request all our speakers, which they always do, but we will just underline it, that as far as their talk is concerned, it should be remaining within the time limit, and which we are saying. And beyond that, there will be a lot of time for interaction with the audience. So having said that, now I will request Professor Anil Kumar Gupta, the Regional Convener, Healthcare Committee of the PhD CCI, to make the welcome address. You are muted, sir, which I was also in the start. You are still muted.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Very good afternoon to each one of you. Many of you are known to me personally, like Mr. Manoj and others. Let me tell you, Gano Sahab, you have made my task very simple. Yet, I will be not only doing the welcome address, I will also introduce little, in addition to what you have said, though there is little I can add, that I will attempt. Let me share with you, sir, PSD Chamber of Commerce has been doing a great job for the development of the industries at the various level in almost every sphere. Each one of you are aware. And in continuation to the main objective, which they have very successfully done it, we are also having a series of interactions on medical devices. I don't have to repeat it again and again, and that, since it is important, I will share. It's a sunrise area. Government of India is interested. Professional bodies like PSD Chamber of Commerce is in the stakeholders, the manufacturer, the industrialist, the doctor, all stakeholders are interested that it flourishes. And not only, as of today, we are net importer of the medical devices. The attempt is, with the contribution of everybody, be it the government, be it the professional bodies like PSD, and the most important stakeholder, the industrialists, the participants, to contribute, and we very soon become the net exporter. And I have no hesitation to say, I have a couple of factories I have visited, like Mr. Minocha is laughing. Yes, I have visited Merrill. They invited me. Of course, they may have made many more progress. I don't know. The latest it was done. Similarly, GE Electricals in Bangalore, Ronsons, they have been making great. And there are many more, which may be equivalent and maybe higher, which I am not aware. They're doing tremendous job. And in that series, PSD is organizing the fifth one. All four has been nothing but a great success. The participation has been immense. When we started it, we expected that the participant will be around 50 to 100. Lo and behold, last time, the fourth one was having more than nearly 600 participants. Amazing. And this time also, a couple of hours back, around 400 have registered, and I'm very confident it might have crossed 600 or so. This all shows the commitment of the organizations I view, and simultaneously, as my friend Colonel Bhargava has already shared the government's commitment to come up with a newer bill, new drugs, medical devices, and cosmetics bill, which is in the preparation, as he shared, and a couple of things. So, my dear friends, PhD Chamber of Commerce will always be interested in everything which the nation wants, which the government wants, and the most importantly, the participants, the delegates, and the members of the PhD and the industry people want. So, in this, we have lined up a couple of the very best speakers. Previous speakers, they are similar, most of them are the same. Their performance has been exceptionally well. I have been shared by a couple of people that the participation and the contents and the delivery was exceptionally good, and they say that it has definitely made some difference. My dear friends, I will not talk much. I will still few things I will share. As many of you may be know, I worked as a chief of the hospital in the PJ for 26 years, and once what we did is we worked out 20 years back. We worked out how much is the medical devices each year. The institute is generating prescriptions. I remember it was in 2001, and that time it worked out that on an estimate more than 100 crore of medical equipment is ordered for the patients. Apart from our own purchases, more than 100 crore in 2001, and now it's 2022. Tremendous improvement in technology in the gadgets, and I will not be surprised that if the PGI generates more than 500 crore worth of medical devices for the public. I don't say that we buy anything around 200 crore rupees of medical equipment, but the prescriptions may be touching 500 crore or maybe more, because more areas have been involved, new technologies have been on, artificial intelligence has made a huge difference, and the number of patients coming to the hospitals are, so there is exponential demand for the medical devices of the quality one at the most cheapest rate. And we Indians are very good in producing quality products at most competitive prices. And the government, the professional body, and your commitment is making it a great success. And with this, I must say that the combination of ISO 13485 2016, because it came up in year 2016, and the newer bill, which Colonel Bhargava rightly said that was put on website on 8th of July with 45 days of mandate, and I'm hopeful by the end of August, most of the objections will be there. Generally, I have read that, studied that whole subject running into around 100 pages or so. There are minor changes expected from the inputs, and soon there will be an act, new drugs, medical devices and cosmetic acts, maybe in 2022 or maybe in 2020, as and when it is notified. These two, ISO 13485 2016 and the new act will create a huge impetus to this industry. Another thing is that, as Colonel Bhargava has very clearly said, what the new act says and what the ISO has many chapters. The class 4 addresses the quality management system. It is basically original out of ISO 9000, modified for the medical devices. It addresses the journal requirements, and there is a class 4 which is our management responsibility. Class 6 is resources needed, be it people, be it policy, be it infrastructure, be it environment, etc. Class 7 is operations. Very, very important. The ISO 1348 also addresses the monitoring and measurement and customer satisfaction. So, my dear friends, the delegate, those who are the industry, already industry, those who wish to be the industry, my own request is kindly address both of them, ISO 1348 and upcoming bill, which might have been tweaked a little bit, but is available on internet, go through it and make a huge difference, make a win-win situation for yourself, for society, for the nation. And with this, there could be few other things which can one share, but I will leave it to the guest speakers to share it. But my whole interest, the PhD's interest, and all of us is that Shining India, Atmanirbhar India become net exporter of quality, sophisticated medical devices very soon. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta, for a very passionate talk about how we will move on from import to export, and especially throwing light upon how this ISO 13485 is a product of ISO 9001. So with this, I now move on to the next chapter where we have Mr. M.G. Satyendra, who is going to deliver a talk on the 7 basic qualities that are required. So Mr. Satyendra has 40 years in product. As far as he is concerned, has more than 40 years in product certification. He has served as Director BIS, Head CSA International, Head Intertech South and West, past assessor of NABL and MABCB. He has been faculty for training at IEEMA, IMTMA, etc. So I think there can be no better person to talk, and I will request him to take on from now. Thank you, Mr. Satyendra.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for that introduction. And thank you, PhD Chamber and Rinneet, for always remembering me. I think almost I am becoming a part of the regular PhD, as it looks like. So anyway, it's a real pleasure. And we will start our presentation now. I hope everybody can see the screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what we are going to talk in the next 15-20 minutes is basically the fundamental principles, the basis of which is 13485, 9001, and many other management system standards. So this was developed by none other than the International Organization of Standardization, what we popularly know as ISO. And these principles, with the experience they had in certification, in management systems, it was found that this is something which it's kind of a basic belief, as it says in the ISO document, a fundamental belief or a rule or a value. If you accept it and use it as a basis of quality management, your conformity, no matter whether it is 13485 or 9000, would be a cakewalk. So you can call this as the 7 pillars on which the entire management system is based. So this presentation is also actually from the ISO with little bit tweaking here and there. So we'll go through it. We'll see what are those 7 principles, and basic idea of this presentation is to tell you what to do. Everybody tells about the benefits. Yes, we will also tell about the benefits, but we'll also tell what you should do in your organization to implement these and make your life easy. So what are those principles? Customer focus. We all know that customer is the most important character in our entire, the facade of manufacturing. Leadership. Without a good leadership, what happens? We all know. We have the experience. Engagement of people. How do you engage the people? Keep them engaged in the factory, in the industry, and towards the quality objectives. Process approach, how to make each activity as a process. Improvement is a part of every management system standard. Not only management system standard, if you are having a laboratory, an inspection agency, a certification body, everywhere there is a clause where it requires you to show how you improve from year to year. And then evidence-based decision making, any audit, any inspection, anything you do, It doesn't work if it is not based on real verifiable evidence. So that also we will talk about it. And the customer, the interested parties, who are they? How do we maintain that relationship? That is a final principle. It's not that you should go it in the, go ahead in the same order. That's why the ISO says that the importance of priorities, they vary from organizations to organization. Some may be mature in one area, not very mature in another area. So it's not that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 you should implement in the same sequence. It could vary from industry to industry depending on the maturity of that industry. So we come to the very first class, customer focus. I think those who have been in 9000 from ages, they would have heard this or read this statement, meeting and exceeding customer expectations, right from the very first version of the 9001, stated and implied needs, it said. And meeting and exceeding customer expectation is the crux of running any business, a service, a manufacturing, whatever may be your business. How do we do that? Having more interaction. More interaction means more value and retaining the confidence of the customer. Why? Basically, increased satisfaction from the customer improves the loyalty. And everybody today in the business, loyalty of the customer is the most important thing. How much repeat orders I get from a particular customer. So keeping customer happy, keeping customer satisfied is the most important thing, because that loyalty gives you repeat business and obviously enhances the reputation of the organization, expands the customer base. Even in a restaurant, when we go, why do we go repeatedly? Because the service is good, because we like the food. And that's the classic example where it goes from, one to another, no advertisement, nothing. Some small restaurant getting huge crowds. Why? Because we enhance their reputation as customers. So that is required. Obviously, end of the day, I want to see my bottom line, increased revenue. So with all these benefits coming out from customer focus, what do we have to do? Recognize, number one thing is recognize direct and indirect customers. In fact, this has become a clause in 9001, though it's not very specifically mentioned in 13485. Many times we forget these indirect customers. The other day when we were making some, list of indirect customers, I was telling the transporter, the manufacturer's transporter, kaise mera customer ho gaya? I said, look, you are dispatching the material all over the country. How many times has it reached the consignee in time? How many times it has got damaged on the way? Have you ever talked or discussed with that agency how to improve? Because it ultimately affects your performance. The first aspect of customer satisfaction is affected because of the transporter, and he is also your indirect customer. So the recognition of indirect customers today is a weak point in many places we have seen when we were assessing the companies. So look at who all can affect. Not the direct ones are always there right across. You know who are they. But many times these hidden indirect customers who add value to your service or your manufacturing have to be identified. And then understand what is their need also. Because their needs, once you understand and address them as far as possible, your life becomes easy. Link your objectives to the customer needs and expectations. The objectives of the company, we always have these, measurable objectives we should have. Look at the positive feedback, negative feedback, all put on the paper and never analyzed. All the time we get this, huge file they bring across and so, sir, itna customer ka feedback aaya hai, 4 diya, 5 diya. तो कभी हम पूछते हैं कि 4 वाले को पूछा कि हम 5 कैसे बनेंगे? No answer. And many things that customer feedback is only that piece of paper. We always keep telling, go to your customer, talk to him, make a minute of the telephone conversation you had. Maybe he'll open up then. communicating the needs and expectations throughout the organizations. This is the other side. If your company, your employees do not know what are the expectations, obviously there is a gap. So communicating within the organization is again a very important thing. Planning, designing, developing, and delivering the goods and services to meet customer needs. Of course, it's again repeated because this is the most important thing. And final thing in this, what you need to do is measure and monitor the satisfaction. Many times we forget this. We don't measure, we don't monitor, and we assume the customer is there forever. And suddenly you find that he's gone somewhere else. Why? Had you kept in touch and had you monitored his satisfaction index or the weak points, or maybe he found something better, then interaction would have made you to go to the same level. Competition is everywhere. So you need to definitely measure and monitor. And this is another aspect we have always found not done everywhere. So these are the action points to enhance the customer focus. Now we go to the next one, leadership. Again, we forget that leaders are at all levels. It's not just the CEO or the MD or the director sitting and then running the show. Leaders at all levels means even in the shop floor, in the particular departments, each area there is a leader, and it is their responsibility to establish that unity of purpose and direction so that we achieve the objectives. And once you achieve the objectives and the leadership is good and they give a good direction in each department, each area of work, effectiveness and efficiency automatically will increase. Better coordination would be there. Many times we find this. Marketing gets some order. I have done third-party inspection for BHEL, NTPC for many, many years. And we go to the shop floor, he says, "Humko to malum nahi ye banaya." So your control panel has some BOM which is specified there, and what is made is something else, because the leaders on those departments never communicated properly. They assumed. So never assume anything. Have proper coordination within the organization, and the better the communication, better is the product, better is the efficiency, better is the effectiveness. So that's very important. We go to the action points. So what do? Yes, communicate. Communicate the organization's mission, vision, strategy, policies, processes, everything. Communication is not good. See, you all know that when we audit, we ask, what is your quality policy? At least some knowledge. We don't expect them to have it by-hearted, but at least he should know what's going on. The other day, somewhere I asked 13485, jante ho, to some, little bit lower level. He said, nahi sir, wo 13485 nahi hai, wo 12385 ho gaya. Maine kiski baat kar rahe ho? Wahi sir, Delhi Jhansi wali express hai na, wo weekly 3 days. Imagine. Now this is the height. I mean, that means he didn't know also that your audit is going on. अब इसको ये भी पता नहीं कि 13485 के लिए अप्लाई किया हुआ, and this is what happens in the consultants. Sorry to say that sometimes it's better you learn things yourself. You use them for advice and hand holding, but never ever get them to do everything you are supposed to do, and then you'll come with these type of answers. And I mean, end of the day, I always tell, don't work for auditors. If you start working for auditors, this is what you'll get. You'll get a certificate, no doubt, hang it on the wall, and that's the end of it. So leaders should establish a culture of trust, integrity, encourage throughout. Lead by example. That is what it says. Ensure that leaders at all levels are positive examples to the people in the organization. Provide them the required resources. With practical difficulties, yes, could be there, but as far as possible, provide them training, authority to act. Many a times the training part is forgotten. Let us remember there is attrition everywhere. Somebody gets a better opportunity, it goes away, he or she. But then you also recruit people and forget that they are supposed to be trained. They are supposed to be trained in the job. You assume that they learn by working, you have gone 3 steps below. So remember about that. Keep the knowledge intact in the organization. And of course, not money is always not the only thing an employee recognizes. Contribution, whatever he has done, should be recognized. Inspire and encourage them. Even, one of the days I travel a lot, and one of the security check guys in an airport, उसको मतलब इतना खुशी था कि उसका फोटोग्राफ आया है. They put employee of the month. Sir, मेरा पिक्चर देखा है कि it was afternoon time and little lack. So he wants us to see and recognize. I mean, that khushi you see on his face, just because there is a picture of his very prominently displayed in that airport. So many things could be done to recognize employees' contribution. Leaders should look into that. Let's go to the third point, engagement of people. What does it say? The ISO says, manage the organization effectively and efficiently. It is important to involve all the peoples at all levels and to respect them as individuals. No one is like, अरे क्या कर रहा है, इसका तो कुछ छोटा काम है, बड़ा काम है. Even the housekeeping staff is important at times, and recognize them. Recognize them, empower them. Once you recognize the capability, definitely you can empower them with certain responsibilities, certain authorities, and look how they function. This will also give an good understanding of the quality objectives by all the people, and obviously motivation would be increased, personal development increases, satisfaction increases, trust increases. Just before coming here, I was in Sholapur, a small town in Maharashtra, assessing a company making surgical implants. All 4 decades of auditing, whether it was BIS, Intertech, CSA, UL, all of them I have done. NABCB, NABL. You will have some disgruntled faces, somebody very sad, somebody complaining about the organization. Kya karenge sahab, idhar aise hi hota hai, ye wo. First organization, I in fact told in the closing meeting also that everybody with a smile. Everybody explaining what they are doing with pride, and in such a small place. Not that the facilities were great, not that the infrastructure was great, but I could see a smile on everybody's face, and it's the first time I have seen that. Engagement of people. Not a company with the MBAs and all that, but at that level they have understood. They said, yes, everybody is our partner. They all know what they are doing, and they all know that it's a very critical product they are manufacturing. No tolerance, no, what do you call it? You cannot leave anything to chance, because it's an implant going into somebody's body. So understanding, engagement of people. So action to be taken, yes, communicating with everyone, the importance of their individual contribution. Promote collaboration throughout the organization. Open discussion and sharing of knowledge. How many companies do this? Empowering people, yes, I already told that. Acknowledging people's contribution, learning. Enable self-evaluation against personal objectives. It is not only for the middle management or the higher management. Self-appraisal. Self-appraisal can be done even by an operator, a worker. Ask him to do it. Then you will find that, yes, some new things would come up. So self-evaluation is very important against personal objectives. Let him tell what is his objective in working in your company. And you will be wonderstruck that some things which they mention, you would have never thought of it. Conduct surveys. So do it systematically. Get some outside agency to do it. If you can do it within, do it yourself. Communicate the results. That is very important. When you do a people satisfaction survey within the organization, the second part is tell them what you found and what actions you are proposing to take. Process approach is something, nobody can live without, and from decades we have been hammering this to every management system, whoever has applied that. Please identify the processes. Please, remember that each activity is a process with certain inputs and outputs. And once you do that and identify what are the factors affecting the process, you definitely would get an optimized performance. Process management promotes efficient use of resources. That is where you find out, okay, I have some additional resource or I'm wasting something. And reduction in cross-functional barriers. Because of lack of process approach, we keep doing things in circles at times. We have all seen this. So educate the people that every activity, everyone has a process to, perform, and he is the owner of it. Let him identify what are the affecting parameters. Let him identify what are the inputs, how he requires them, how he would like to receive them, and also the other part of it, the output from his process. So this will all give confidence. And what you should do, same thing. Define the objectives. Define the objectives of every process. And for every process you identify, establish the authority, responsibility, and accountability. The last one is the most important. Make that person accountable for his process. Otherwise, the whole thing goes for a toss. Understand the capability and determine the resource constraints. This also is never done. You should know you cannot have everything you imagine. Some constraints would be there, but it's always good if you could identify, okay, these are my resource constraints to enable this process to function. I have certain constraints, so this is the best you could do. And then later on, you can see how to overcome those constraints. Interdependent processes have to be identified, which all, again, we say, once you know the interrelations between the two processes, you can manage them very well. So understanding these things, ensuring that the information is available. So it's not just somebody doing a drawing or saying that, okay, these are the 10 processes and this thing, but then you should make those processes and knowledge available for those who don't know, to improve them, to allow them to improve, then obviously monitor, analyze, and evaluate. And of risk management, again, all standards have come up with this, and look at the risks which can affect the output of a process and ultimately the final outcome. What are you going to give it to the customer? So all these are very important. Take these actions. Then we come to the improvement. As I told you, every standard talks about improvement. Continual improvement is one definition. Again, we have been hammering step by step incremental improvements. So this is also essential to maintain the current levels and to create new opportunities, to react to the changes of internal conditions and external conditions, which are ever changing today. Many businesses which were considered as monopolies are not existing today. And the city where I live, Bangalore, has seen classic examples of these. ITI, the telephones, the HMT watches, where are they today? Never reacted to the changes. When the other manufacturers came with digital products, never reacted. They thought they are the timekeepers of the nation and gone. So what are the benefits? Improvements keeps you focused, and the root cause investigation always is a part of improvement. And this will determine what kind of a preventive action or risk management you should do, what corrective actions are to be taken, and it gives you the ability to anticipate what changes are likely to come, what are the external risks coming in, breakthrough improvements. All these are part of improvements. And to achieve this, what are the action points? Promote establishment of improvement objectives. Many times they say, okay, time objective, then I have it. Training, everybody likes that. 5 training, show at least 3 has been done. Auditor is happy, you are happy. But did you ever have objectives to make some real improvement in the product? Look at that. Educate and train people at all levels to apply basic tools. Yes, there are companies who use Kaizen and other, quality tools, but there was never any restriction. Acha, wo bhi karna hai. We always ask, was there any restriction to educate them on something to improve? There is a company in Hyderabad where the guy, it's a big company. He says that you join this company when you want, and for this particular job responsibility, आप वही करते रहेंगे तो मैं आपका तनख्वाह क्यों बढ़ाऊंगा? I'm not going to increase your salary. You show something, some improvement in your process. You show that something better can be done. On the spot, I give increment. I was wondering, even such companies exist in India? Yes, it is there in Hyderabad. So nobody gets any increment unless even the worker level has to show that, yes, this tool I have done like this, so I can increase my productivity or product quality, anything. So ensure people do something, ensure their competency, give them whatever training is required, and deploy processes to have such improvement projects throughout the organization. And not just having the projects, ISO says track them, review them. If you don't do that and don't look at the completion, again, no point in doing it. Evidence-based decisions, yes, there is no, enough has been told about it, and there is no area where if we don't do it, yes, the audit, the assessment, we say that it's not effective, not done if there is no evidence to back up what we saw. So decision making itself is a complex process. Always there is an uncertainty. Multiple types of input sources come. Many of them may be subjective, but then if you analyze properly, evaluate properly, definitely you will get the results. Improved efficiency, increased ability to review, challenge the opinions, everything can be done. That is why we all tell, and I think Mr. Mahadevan will also hop on this subject, that if you are competent, you have understood the standard, what is to be done, no matter any auditor comes, you will be confident in responding to them, and you will also be confident in telling them if somebody says that this is a non-conformity and you know the standard, you will have the right, or you will have the, face to face them and say that, sir, under which clause is it? Can you tell me? So when you ask like that, the other guy has to come back to the standard, understand, and tell you that it is as per some clause, or you will say that, okay, sorry, this is not an non-conformity. So understanding is very important. What do you do for evidence-based decisions? Monitor all the key indicators. There will be always certain key performance indicators which determine the organization's performance. Identify them. Make all the data available. And the data or the measurement should be accurate, reliable, and secure. Many of you may be knowing that there is a thing known as measurement uncertainty, especially the laboratory guys. We calculate the reliability of measurement. Why do we do that? The more accurate the measurement, the better is the product. If something cannot be measured, sorry, we cannot say how good or bad it is. So measurement is the fundamental thing in any product development, and ensure that your measurement is accurate, reliable, and secure. Ensure that people are competent to do that. Analyze the data, evaluate the data, and then take the decision. So the decisions are hearsay, product will also be like that. Finally, look into the relationship management. This is where we identify who are our internal suppliers, who are our external suppliers, who are the interested parties, right from your bankers, your environment around the industry, the social environment. Everything comes into relationship management. And if you understand them, if you respond to the opportunities and constraints related to each of these relationships, direct, indirect, as I told you, the transporter, the raw material supplier, maybe sometimes it could be the atmosphere, the politics around, all that. Yes, everything comes into picture. An interested party leads to enhanced performance if you take care of their interests, understand their interest, come to a common understanding of goals and values between those parties, sharing the resources and competences. Many times you may have a person who is competent to advise your other side, advise your raw material supplier, advise a service provider. He will be also happy that he has learned something more, and the relationship and the bond grows stronger. As I told in the beginning, we want to sustain the relationships to enhance our business. So that's what the ISO says, a well-managed supply chain is the one which will provide you stable force, stable supply of goods and services. So determine who are them, investors, employees, society, determine and prioritize the relationships, establish what are the short-term gains, what are the long-term considerations. Many times we don't look at the long-term considerations. That is very important. Pool and share the information and expertise and the resources. Then measurement, yes, everywhere we have to measure the performance and provide the feedback to the interested parties. Look, your component is better now, or it has deteriorated, or you should do something to enhance the improvement initiative. So encourage them also. Encourage the suppliers, encourage the partners, recognize them. Many big companies do it, but there is, again, as I told, no restriction. Anyone can do that. So what is in conclusion? Yes, these are the few general perspectives suggested by ISO. How to implement, where to stress, depends on the nature of your organization. Look at these things, do a gap analysis. Now you have all the principles. How much of it have you implemented? And where do you think you can do better? Look at that and determine the areas. Then you start implementing. Remember, you can again improvise, add more to suit your need. So, setting up your quality management system, whether it is 13485 or 9001 or whatever, based on these principles, world has found it has been beneficial. You implement this and you'll find that implementing the standard has become very easy. Well, that's it from me, friends. Thank you. And
yeah, Mr. Satyendra, thank you very much. And I must say that you have been extremely punctual without any prompting from my side. You have finished it exactly in time. Thank you so much. And I must say that the 7 QMPs that you mentioned, right from customer focus, leadership, engagement of people, process approach, improvement, evidence-based decisions, and relationship management. I think each point is worth its weight in gold. Entire world community today is focused on customer focus, customer centricity, as one may call. And if the ISO emphasizes on that, I don't think it is doing anything which is beyond what is a mandatory requirement these days. And your bringing in the practical aspects like the HMT, amongst others, showcases your very deep practical experience that you have by going to the various institutions and companies and their base. Thank you very much. And I should bring in here for the audience that your questions and queries will be answered towards the end. We have kept adequate time for that. And people like Mr. Satyendra are helping us by finishing on time. So we are going to have definitely a lot of time for you. So kindly keep writing to Ramneet, and we are compiling your questions, and we will ensure that you get an adequate response. Of course, now next in line, we have Mr. Mahadevan, who is the Vice President and Business Segment Head Medical of DQS India and Yush Quality System India Private Limited. He is going to speak on the overview of the certification process and importance of 13485 certification from the compliance perspective. And let me say that he is adequately, I would say more than adequately qualified for addressing this, because he, firstly, if I briefly tell, he's currently working as Vice President and managing the medical certification business vertical in the one of the German-based notification bodies having operations in India and located in Bangalore. He is an electrical and electronics graduate with 12 years of industrial experience in various industries, including design, development, and manufacture of medical devices. He also has 12 years of auditing experience towards medical device quality management systems and Australia, Brazil, Canada, Japan, and USA. I think he has left nothing out of all. Maybe African countries would be the next, possibly. So anyway, I think Mr. Mahadevan is the right person to address one of the most important topics, and that is what is the certification process for IC for this ISO 13485. So thank you. Over to you, Mr. Mahadevan.
Thanks, Rajiv ji. Good afternoon, all. Thanks for the introduction as well. Just a minute, I'll be sharing my screen now. Yeah, hope you all can see my screen.
Yes,
okay.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, great. Okay. So I'm going to talk about the topic related to the importance of 13485 and how it is going to help in demonstrating compliance to the regulatory requirements across the globe for medical devices. Of course, I will also briefly talk about in terms of the certification process in terms of ISO 13485, what manufacturer needs to do and what is the role of a certification body and what are all the process steps involved into that. So these are all the 4 basic topics which I will be covering in the next 15-20 minutes. First, into the basics of ISO 13485. As many of you would have seen the standard, the title of the standard itself is Medical Devices Quality Management System, Requirements for Regulatory Purposes. So the title and the purpose of the standard itself is very clearly indicating that it is going to provide you a basic framework in terms of how you can comply, or it is going to facilitate you in terms of bringing in processes to demonstrate regulatory compliance. So that is where the main title of the standard itself is driving the regulatory purposes. So it also helps the manufacturers, medical device manufacturers, to set up processes which can consistently provide the product's medical devices specifically in terms of their design, production, installation, deliveries, and the other services what related to the medical devices, with a specific focus on to the intended purpose of the medical device. And this 13485 standard is not only applicable for the manufacturers, but also to the stakeholders involved into the supply chain. So like the suppliers who are providing materials to the medical device manufacturers, or to the distributors who are distributing the medical devices. So all these people can also use 13485 standard and implement a quality management system so that it can instill confidence into the end user and to the patient and to the regulators about the processes and to the consistency of the deliverables what the organizations are doing. My friend Satyendra has helped me a lot. So 13485 standards has been also built in 8 management principles. Of course, Satyendra has given adequate details about these principles. Nothing different in 13485. It is all the same, but here the number is, instead of 7, it is 8. It's all the same. It's only a introduction of additional things, which is just a bifurcation of one of the topics which has been described by Satyendra. Customer focus, we heard from Satyendra that how important it is, and customer is the main purpose of your business as well, right? So this brings in the importance of meeting the customer and to exceed in some cases in these customer and the stakeholder requirements. Why I bring in stakeholder requirements is the regulators are also key stakeholder in terms of medical devices. Leadership, of course, you need to have a appropriate leadership in terms of the company in demonstrating compliance and to have visionary thinking and towards compliance perspective, specifically onto the regulatory requirements, right? And if the leadership is not having commitment in terms of the compliance, then the whole organization will have challenge in terms of demonstrating or meeting to the requirements. Involvement of people, it is a very, very important item in which everybody needs to focus on. Everyone in the company is important and everyone contributes towards the vision of the company, and everyone need to know about how they are contributing, what is their contribution towards the company's vision, how their day-to-day work, what they are doing is impacting in terms of the product quality or in terms of how it is impacting in terms of the medical devices. Satyendra brought in an example where he cited an implant company. So that is very critical that each and every one is aware of the importance of their activity. So involvement of people is a very, very key element in terms of demonstrating compliance towards the regulatory requirements and also to have successful implementation of the quality management system. Process approach, it goes without saying, you need to determine the processes. Of course, determining the process will depend on the nature of business, the nature of product, the size of the company. All those things will have an impact in terms of determining the processes, because it is not that one size fits for all. So a company making implants will have a different set of process rather than a company making a software as a medical device. So you will have to determine, the management and the team has to determine the appropriate processes which are applicable to them, and also considering the regulatory requirements, what are all the processes which they need to put in place. Interrelation of process, each process are interrelated. Without that interrelation, the organization cannot function. Be it any process, it has an input, output, and output of a process goes as an input to the next one, and it goes on. And it is very important, you need to determine appropriate interrelation, how each process are interacting with each other. Next important thing in process approach is monitoring and controls. You need to have mechanism in terms of monitoring the processes and also to control them whenever it is going a little away from your set objectives. System approach to management. This is one which you see a little bit different from what Satyendra had presented. I wouldn't say it is different. It is just an extension, which you can say. So this approach helps in identifying and understanding and managing the process and to streamline your business. So this facilitates in terms of bringing an overall picture on how the organization processes are performing and facilitates improvement, which is the next block in terms of the management principles. So this provides also a framework in determining the opportunities to improve, implement, monitor, and then see the success. Factual approach to decision making, evidence-based, data-based decision making, where you need to have appropriate evidences and data collection mechanism to monitor it based on your monitoring of your process, to see where the trends are going, and then take appropriate decisions to bring in into right track and to see the organization grows to the next level. Mutually beneficial supplier relationship. This is also an important thing because there is always a dependency on a supply chain for any organization. So you need to have a mutually beneficial relationship. You need to have a mutually beneficial relationship with the supplier, which helps in terms of growing the business together and also have flexibility with the suppliers and also with your relationship with your suppliers. The next important topic is regulatory compliance and how 13485 requirements are getting linked and how it is going to help you in terms of demonstrating the compliance. That's what we will be covering now. Basic principles in which the regulatory framework in any jurisdiction or any geography, if you look at, it has basic elements. First, definition of medical device, risk-based classification, responsibility and registration for medical device, quality management system requirements, safety, effectiveness and clinical evaluation, incident reporting, and conformity assessment. So each regulatory requirement, each regulatory jurisdiction has its own definition for medical device, more or less a common definition. So first thing, we need to identify whether whatever your device is a medical device based on those applicable regulatory requirements. Then each regulation has its own risk-based classification. So we would have seen many gradings, what they call it, or many methods in which they classify. But the fundamental principle in terms of classification of medical device is based on the risk, what the medical device poses. So here we call it the class A, class B, class C, class D, whereas in the Europe it is class 1, class 2A, class 2B, class 3. In the US it is class 1, class 2, class 3, and Canada it is class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4. So there are different numbers or the names which they give for the classification, but the fundamental principle is risk-based classification. When it comes to risk-based classification, the main consideration is the intended use and the intended purpose of the medical device, based on which the classification is being done. Next comes the responsibility and registration for the medical device. So responsibility and registration for the medical device. So who's responsible to do the registration activities in that geography and how the registration process works? These things are all given in the regulation. Next, the regulation gives also the quality management system requirements, which is all based in the principles of ISO 13485. We'll come to that later in terms of how the linking is being given. Next is the safety, effectiveness, and clinical evaluation. So the safety, effectiveness, it goes without saying, the efficacy of the medical device, the safety of it, and the clinical performance of it. This is of utmost importance. So that is a requirement which is also given with respect to that. Next comes the incident reporting in terms of monitoring the performance of the medical device in the market, and then having controls and mechanisms in terms of reporting the incidents and the further actions. The last thing is the conformity assessment. Conformity assessment methods for various regulations are in different models. Sometimes it is directly by the regulator. Some areas it is through a third-party assessments. So conformity assessment, how the regulators or the regulatory bodies in these geographies assess the conformity of the device as well as the quality system of the manufacturer in order to ensure it is being met. So these are all the basic contents of any regulation which we have come across so far. What is the expectations of the regulations? Expectations from the regulations are manufacturers continually produce safe and effective medical device in a controlled manner. So this is very critical to have consistently producing safe and effective medical devices in the controlled conditions. Medical device comply with generally recognized state of the art. So generally recognized state of the art, it gives way for innovation, it gives way for improvements of products, gain knowledge from the use of device, that is the post-market activities where you need to continuously monitor the performance of your medical device in the market and take appropriate actions in terms of improvement of your device or your processes. Manufacturers have a means in place to investigate and report incidents involving their device. So when you gain knowledge about your device, if there is any malfunction leading to any incidents, you need to report these incidents as per the applicable regulatory requirements. The bottom line, if you look at, is only safe and effective medical devices are placed in the market. That is the fundamental goal of every regulator, so that only safe and effective medical devices are placed into the market. ISO 13485 linkage with respect to regulatory requirements. This is the most important thing which everybody needs to focus on. First thing, if you look at the ISO 13485 standard, the word regulatory, if you search in the standard, the word regulatory appears 81 times, out of which 55 times it appears within clause 4 to clause 8. So that's the level of important stress which is being given in terms of the regulatory compliance and how it is getting interleaved with the requirements of 13485. First thing, the organization need to identify the applicable regulations. This comes from the market needs. So what are all the market in which you want to sell your product, based on which the manufacturer need to identify the applicable regulation. So there are requirements in the ISO standard which states that the manufacturer need to determine the applicable regulatory requirements. So if you look at the requirement in 7.2.1, it states the manufacturer need to determine the applicable regulatory requirements for the product in the market in which they are going to place it. Next comes the role of the organization. This is very critical in terms of the liability part of it for the manufacturers as well. Role of the organization. So the role of the organization is to what extent the organization is involved into the medical device life cycle. That is very important. If he's a legal manufacturer, or he's going to do a contract manufacturing, or he's only a supplier, or he's a distributor, or he's an authorized representative. So depending on the role of the organization, the extent of the applicability of regulatory requirements varies. For a legal manufacturer, he is the important person and he is responsible for the demonstrating compliance to applicable regulatory requirements. For a contract manufacturer, the requirements still may be applicable depending on the contract what he has with his customers who is going to buy his product and brand it. So it depends. So the role of organization, defining the role of the organization in the context of the regulatory requirement is very important. The next important thing which the ISO standard also specifies is medical device files. There is a separate clause which has been given in the standard for medical device file, which states the minimum requirements. I say it is a minimum requirements what it states. So again, with the type and complexity of the device and with respect to the operations of the organization, the contents of the medical device varies. So the medical device file contents based on the product and the regulatory requirements which the manufacturer need to comply with, the contents of the medical device file keeps varying. So it may be lesser, it may be more. So that is what in many regulations it has been called into different names, like a technical file, technical dossier, medical device document, regulatory document. There are multiple names which they call it, but the ultimate purpose of it is to demonstrate the product, whatever it is being made, is meeting to the regulatory requirements. Management commitment. So even in the ISO 13485 standard, it clearly states that management commitment towards the regulatory compliance is important. So the management commitment need to be demonstrated by means of establishing appropriate quality objectives in line with the applicable regulatory requirements. That is important. And providing resources, providing appropriate resources, both in terms of infrastructure and in terms of human manpower, adequately and appropriately trained and skilled manpower to ensure the compliance to the regulatory requirements can be met. Risk management, fundamental thing in terms of medical device manufacturing. Risk management is an integrated process which is common into the 13485 requirements as well. There is a standard, separate standard which is there, ISO 14971, which details out the requirements on how the risk management activities and the processes to be done with. But this goes hand in hand with the medical device lifecycle process, specifically starting from your concept till end of life. The risk management is applicable. Design considerations, whatever the regulatory requirements are there, that needs to be taken in as a design input. Examples, applicable standards to demonstrate state-of-the-art, benchmarking to demonstrate state-of-the-art, labeling requirements based on the regulatory requirements. It has to be considered as a part of design input. Instructions for use, whatever it is required to use the device safely and effectively. There are requirements in multiple regulations. Those things need to be part of your input so that appropriately you provide those instructions. So there are various design considerations come in from the regulatory aspects as well. Clinical evidence, we saw that in the previous slides that clinical efficacy of the product is also important, is one of the primary thing which any manufacturer need to demonstrate that it meets the intended use. Intended use of any medical devices could be diagnostic or therapeutic on a broad level. So you need to demonstrate that clinical evidence so that you validate your device meeting the intended use. Not only that, you need to continuously monitor your device performance with respect to the clinical outcomes. So most of the regulations talk about post-market clinical follow-up activities to see that your clinical outcomes from your device are continuously monitored and to see the benefits of your device outweighs the risk. Post-market surveillance activities are extremely important from any regulation perspective, where you need to monitor the performance of your device, including complaints investigation and reporting to any regulatory authorities in terms of adverse events and whatnot. The requirements are all given in various regulations. So ISO 13485, if you look at into the clause 8, 8.2.1 to 8.3.4, if you look at it, all talks about most of the things are all related in terms of monitoring your device, post-market monitoring of your device and subsequent actions, including the reporting to the regulatory authorities. Corrective actions and preventive actions. So whenever you take a corrective action or a preventive action, there is always a review which you need to do in terms of ensuring the actions still continue to comply with the regulatory requirements and does not adversely affect the safety and performance of the device. So these are certain examples of linkages from various, how the regulatory requirements get interleaved with the ISO 13485 requirements. So these are some examples of regulations which are very prominently being talked about into the industries nowadays. Of course, in India, we have the Medical Device Rules 2017. Europe, we have medical device regulation, the MDR, EU MDR 2017/745, which is covering for medical devices and implantable devices. For Europe, it is IVDR, in vitro diagnostic regulation. For Canada, it is Canadian Medical Device Regulation. Japan, it is PAL JGMP Ordinance 169. And USA, we have 21 CFR 820, which is for the quality system regulation. And there are other requirements in terms of labeling requirements. There are separate regulations and device incident reporting, removals, corrections, all those things. We have different regulations which are there for the US. So having seen how the interlink with the regulations and the 13485 requirements, let us see the benefits of compliance of 13485. It provides the framework for compliance to the regulatory requirements. We have seen that in detail now. And it facilitates to control your risk with respect to your product as well as your process. How it facilitates is there are requirements in the standard which asks you to do a review of your changes, and whenever you do any change, you need to visit your risk management to see how it is impacting in terms of further reducing the risk in terms of your product or even in terms of your processes. And it contributes to your product safety and performance, which we have seen how the design considerations in terms of the regulatory requirements and the state of the art, which you continuously need to be aware and then see to improve the product's performances. So it contributes to your product safety and performance of the device. And it brings out the company's competency. How it brings out the company's competency is bringing out more safe and effective products. It demonstrates the competent team available with the company. So it brings out the competency of the company and also enables business benefits. Improves the quality of the service, it goes without saying, and increases stakeholder satisfaction. Stakeholders is a very large term over here. Stakeholders could be your customers, the regulators, even your own employees, your suppliers. So it mutually benefits each other and increases the stakeholder satisfaction. And it brings in transparency and clarity of your own internal processes so that you become a process-driven company and not overly depending on people. We have seen successful companies across the globe are all strong in their own processes and their vision. So this drives the company. So this facilitates to have a more process-oriented and transparent approach in which you can get benefit. So ultimately, it sets up the foundation for the organization, processes, and compliance, and to facilitate your growth. So the last topic is on to the certification process. So certification process, I will touch upon very briefly. Manufacturers need to develop and implement the quality management system, implement the applicable regulatory requirements, and effectively monitor and maintain the quality management system. So this is the responsibilities of the manufacturer, right? And what as a certification body does? Certification body does the assessments in accordance with the ISO 13485 requirements and the applicable regulatory requirements. And of course, the processes, internal processes of the certification body and the accreditation requirements. Maintenance of the certificate, which comes with your surveillance audits and based on the contractual obligation with the manufacturers, the maintenance of the certificate activities are done. So in a nutshell, this is how the process works. initial information collection. So any CB will collect the initial information from the manufacturer in order to determine the efforts required in the assessment. So this includes identifying the products, whatever it is being covered, the scoping of their quality, the scope of the certificate, how it will be, what are all the locations which need to be covered, what processes are covered in each location, how many employees are involved. So based on all these factors, the number of days required for the audits are estimated. And then a commercial agreement with the manufacturer is being entered with. Then comes in the stage 1 audit, which is preliminarily the document review assessment to see the readiness of the organization in terms of the certification. Then comes the stage 2 audit, where the complete evaluation and the assessment of the quality system towards the effective implementation is being done. Then comes the surveillance audits. Surveillance audits will be at a minimum need to be conducted annually, depending on the quality systems performance. What we see in the stage 2 audit, it could be biannual as well, if it is the systems are weak. So need to have the surveillance audits, and then comes the recertification audit. Once the certificate is done, it is valid for 3 years. So at the 3rd year, we need to have the recertification audit to have the continuous certification. So quickly, just a brief about the.
I will request you to now wind up.
Yes, just this one's last slide. So at DQS, we offer the services for CE marking, MDSAP, and ISO 13485 with various accreditations. So you can look at to that hyperlink what it is being provided over there in terms of the products, in terms of the certification services for medical. So thanks for inviting me for this session, and I hope I share a little what I need to share about this topic. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Madhavan. I believe you have given a very, very comprehensive overview about the ISO 13485, starting from the basics, then the 8 management principles, the regulatory compliances, principles and linkages, and you have brought about the 7 common elements of every regulation. Then the expectations of regulations, the linkages of ISO 13485, the benefits and the certification process. Anyone who has been very diligently listening to you, I believe would have by now got a very good overview of what is to be done. And then, of course, they have to reach out to the experts to help them in achieving these standards. So thank you very much. I suppose it has been I think it has been a very, very comprehensive and detailed presentation made by you. Next, of course, we have Mr. Minocha. Sorry, it is Dr. Minocha. He is the Director, Merrill Life Sciences Private Limited at Chhala, Gujarat. And I must say that his company has been doing quite well in terms of R&D, and it has been rewarded as the best patent portfolio in SME category in life sciences in November 2021. So it is a very, very prestigious award. And he is headquartered in Gujarat, India, and conducts business in more than 100 countries. And he also has 100% owned subsidiaries in India, USA, Germany, Brazil, Russia, South Africa, Bangladesh, and Turkey. So one can see the amount of coverage and the footprint that he has globally. He's going to give his industry perspective on challenges faced by medical device manufacturers. I understand, Mr. Minocha, you would be having a lot to tell. But that will be covered in the Q&A. I'll request you to be brief and do it and say what you have to in 5 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Colonel, for giving the introduction. And I just like to say here that I don't have presentation today. I thought I will share my experiences about this ISO 13485. I hope I'm audible to all. Let me just tell you that when we were going through this process, before that we had ISO 9001, for example. Then we come to know that the ISO 13485 has been especially created for medical devices. We try to understand. And then finally, I can only say that there is always a feeling whenever there is new thing is coming in the industry, there has to be a small resistance, there will be more documentation, there will be more work required to be done. But finally, I will say that these are the feeling when you start. But I can always say that no system, no procedure which has benefits to the customer, which has benefits to the manufacturer, which has benefits which has been stated by the people, will be having any adverse effect to anyone. So in any case, I will say here that how this process has benefited exactly. This is something which probably when I come to know, I myself interacted with some of the people, or you can say you have to find a partner who can give this kind of services, and industry always tries to get partners whenever a new services or new product comes. So we also looked into that, but that is very key. You should have a right partner, right? Because if you really look at even through Google or through other sources, there are many kind of boards and partners. And if you don't get right partners, then I can say that system should be there, which should be actually usable. People should execute properly. This is very important, which I found that. And again, I will tell you that how the system basically helps, and it has a different. When we looked at that, the system basically has a quality manuals, maybe a procedures, but one of the important system was corrective and preventive action. This is an excellent system, I can tell you. I give you one or two examples for that. Correct? See, normally what happens, some of the products when you make, and when you go and if you have a complaint, you would like to solve that complaint in which way? Okay, replace the material, give it the new product to the customer. Customer is happy, and your sales continue. Now you have a CAPA log here. You have to find out what is the reason this particular things have got bad. I will say that in vitro diagnostic instrument which we make, it has in vitro reagent cells. So in one of the case, the results have been deviated and the product has been failed. But then, see, the replacing was not a solution. As a part of ISO 14385, you have to find a reason why it is failed. Here again, it was mentioned that the management participation is very important. Management review is very important. All these procedures are well documented here. That means we'll have to really see that sometimes the people who come out with the easy solution perhaps will not be possible when you have this kind of system, and which is properly executed, which is properly monitored by the senior management. Now, in this case, what we found that it was written in the system that the samples, who are the owners, not the manufacturers and the customer. In between, there is a distributor. When we did a complete analysis, we found that this particular region, which was supposed to be kept below 30 degrees, it was supplied in the north, where the temperature used to be high, although it was mentioned to be kept in refrigerator. But then while doing the investigation of corrective action and preventive actions, so you have to fill that log properly, right? What we have done, we really looked at our sent people, and we didn't go by the easy way. By doing this, we found the entire batch which was left in this particular distributor, although this was not to be done. But then later on, it was in fact brought in the knowledge that even your suppliers, distributors, everybody should follow the ISO 14385. Only then the system really functions beautifully. So the solution here came as not that we simply replace the material. Solution came as that you find a reason, and it's not that. When you are manufacturing many products, I can tell you, Colonel Saab, it's very important to mention. You improve the efficiencies. How? See, how, let's say when you are manufacturing a device, there are always rejection. right? 8% rejection, 7% rejection. But then when you continuously improve, when you find the right reason why the rejections have come, man, material, machine. Mistakes are there through man, material, and machine. And if you find the right reason, then your rejection level keeps on reducing. These are the actual facts which we have found. Now, again, I tell you how it changes the productivity, because these are certain practical things which I will be mentioning. Maybe others have mentioned the things, how they implement, but at floor level, how are the benefits which we derive, correct? See, in 2017, there was NPPA imposed the, price reduction of various devices. Prices were brought down to almost 20 to 25% level. Now, that time, we have to be competitive, correct? The ISO system says that it should be not people-driven. It should be procedure-driven. Just now, Madhavan has mentioned that. It is very correct. Earlier, what used to be a process that you have a standard operating process, you manufacture the device. But now you have a written procedure. You have a written training procedure. Now, once you know that you have to, basically when the price reduction is there, you have to increase the efficiency. Surprisingly, when such price reductions have come, it has come with not many benefits. I can tell that, let's say it has come in 2017 itself, correct? The stent requirement in India was 1.5 lakhs. Today it is 4.5 lakhs, 3 times. Knee requirement also has been tripled. So there was, there were many health insurance schemes were implemented by the government. So the devices market also has gone vertically. Now, how to manufacture so fast? People thought, okay, efficiency came into picture. Now, whatever facility you are using in one shift, you use for 3 shifts. But then where is your training manpower? Where you are dependent on the people. Now you are depending on the system. You are depending on the trained system. Training also is a part of that. So you have a training document. You employ the people, see that, ensure that the training is completed, ensure that it is made from people dependent to procedure dependent. Within the same capacity, we could manufacture 3 times by bringing them the shift. And this is how the ISO increases the efficiency. Now, the efficiency, you can use the facility. Your all machines are required 3 times efficiency. Your price can come down. You could still compete. You could still compete and you still make profitable. So these are the systems. They are not only simple. You are there to look at that the procedures are followed. It is benefit to the patient, consistency and quality. Yes. I can only say that the quality is very important, no doubt about that, but the efficiency is very important. Industry can require quality and in terms of efficiency, only then they can survive. Survival is very important for all the industries when prices have to be brought in such levels. Finally, I can say that if I have to conclude which way this is to be told, that ISO systems, industry is very positive for all kinds of systems which benefit to the people, which benefit to the industry. It has to be win-win. Then I will say that if you think, sometimes what happens, emerging industries, sometimes, for namesake implementing of ISO systems, you may have short-term gain, but the long-term pain. Here you may require to have little short-term pain, but then you have lot of long-term gain. There is no shortcut to the success. If you apply the shortcut, it will be short circuit, and the short circuit will have a fire. You will not be able to do what you really wish to achieve. So I would really say that certain aspects of ISO, which involve the management commitment, which required management review. See, everything has to percolate from the top. And if it is executed in the manner in which it is documented, in the manner in which the management has to take the responsibility, in the manner in which it is implemented, not only at your end, it is see, you have to see your customer.
We get that, Dr. Vinod. Yeah.
So these are all the places, if you look at properly, I can tell you that the system has paid us and will be paying. And I tell to my industry colleagues also that please follow the system if you have the system. If you don't have the system, it's something you have to go for that, and it will ultimately benefit to the people.
Thank you. I think these are golden words, especially the aspect that a shortcut is often the longer cut,
Yes.
right? That is one. Second thing, what you say, that process-driven approach is much better than a people's-driven approach. And ultimately, in the long run, everyone exists for generating value, and
Yes.
value can be best generated by. I
By
think what you have given are very sound words, which are based on your practical experience as a leader in manufacturing medical devices. Thank you, Dr. Minocha. This was very useful. And next we have with us Mr. Rajiv Nath. He's the managing director of Hindustan Syringes and Medical Devices Limited, which has a turnover of more than 600 crores. And he's, of course, a lot of acronyms. He is the president of All India Syringes and Needles Manufacturers Association. It is AISNMA, and he's also the founder and coordinator of Association of Indian Medical Device Industry, which is AIMED, with over 350 members. He has more than 40 years of experience. So I'm sure, I know, again, sir, you have a lot to say, and I am confident that people will ask you. But right now, very briefly, if you can give us your entire experience in 5 minutes, that is a great achievement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rajiv Bhargav, and thank you, PST, for inviting me once again to this series. I was part of the first seminar also. And yes, I'll keep it brief and simple. That's why I didn't make a presentation. And I can see the time overrun is there. So the need to be very precise and concise. So very briefly, I would just compliment the excellent inputs which have come in from Mr. Satinder and Mr. Madhavan. Every time I listen to experts, I always learn, and very good learning for me. And it's a good refresher for me also. And what is basically quality? For an entrepreneur, for a businessman, how does he relate to quality? So quality is basically, you can make it as minimal as meeting a regulatory requirement, which are the bare minimum mandatory requirements for patient safety or consumer protection. Or it can be a higher than that to meet a particular standard, whether it is a system standard or whether it is a product standard. Or it can be higher than the product standard or the system standard to please the customer and put in your brand delivery. That becomes your company delivered quality. So quality is as high as the vision of the business owner or the business entrepreneur, where he wants to put himself and where he is benchmarking himself, whether he wants to be the top 3 brands in the world or the top 3 performance delivery products in the world in his particular area, or he wants to be number 1 in India, or he wants to be one of the race. So based on that, you will go forward. And these are the various tools that are available to you in terms of voluntary certification. So in terms of voluntary certification, you can either choose a very basic quality management system like ISO 9000 to demonstrate that your company is system driven by quality. It's not just owner driven by quality or supervisory driven by quality or people driven by quality. In a small company, 5 people, 10 people, person driven is completely fine. But when you have a large organization of 50 people, 5,000 people, there's going to be a turnover of people coming in, coming out, then it needs to be system driven and makes life easier for us. And that makes us allow us to grow much more rapidly and to remain competitive. So you can start from ISO 9000. It was graduated to EN 46001, which was replaced by ISO 13485, QMS systems for regulatory purposes. And then in India, we've gone a step further and we have also introduced with QCI, the ICMED certification or the Indian certification for medical devices, which again is at 2 levels. One is process driven, ICMED 13485, or it can be product certification, ICMED plus. Basically, all these QMS systems are going equal and beyond what is required in the regulatory purposes, so that not only Indian regulators, but international regulators get satisfied when they visit your plant and audit or review your technical files. And then you have to put in a conformity assessment system whereby by testing, by verification, by animal testing if need be, by sterilization testing if need be, by electronic magnetic testing if need be, you will demonstrate that your product is designed as needed. It's meeting the patient safety requirements, even in the absence of product standards, which may not be available in your case. More than 90% of the products in the market of medical devices don't have product standards, yet they still need to be safe. And because of innovation, this will keep on happening, and even it may become 95% going forward with more innovation coming in. So normally standards are available only for products which have been there nearly 15, 20 years in the market. The big issue over here, which is tripping everybody, is fake certification. So I would like to caution all the manufacturers right now, because of regulatory requirements, manufacturers need to register themselves and to demonstrate that they are ISO 13485 certified. And in their haste to get it done, when they are reaching out to consultants who themselves may not be very competent or very trustworthy and trying to make a fast buck in the changing market scenario, they are being misled by these consultants or by their labs or by these certification bodies and by even fake accreditation bodies to come forward with certification which are from unauthentic sources. So unless a certification body is having NABCB accreditation, it is meaningless for you in India. It may be showing that it may be having international accreditation, that is completely fine. But considering India and Indian regulations, it will be just added cost for you to get certified once again. You must look at the companies or certification bodies which are recognized by NABCB and which have been notified by the regulator. There are hardly 8, 10 of them. These are the ones you need to seek to get certification from. Otherwise, you will find that you got certification from one body. The auditors coming in from the regulatory body will be again be different. And then to satisfy your clients, you may be having a third certification body. So try to avoid multiple bodies and then bridge audits and additional expenses. The other area is of fake accreditation. Many of the certification bodies are showing very fancy monograms, US, some or UK, some organization, UKS sounding, but not actually UKS, showing UK certification, but not actually UK based certification, to mislead manufacturers and to mislead their clients. Now clients are smart. They also verify, and we also inform GEM, and we also inform the regulators which certification body is dubious. This will give you a bad name in case you've used them and will affect your credibility. So it is best to go the longer route and the tougher route of choosing the properly accredited certification body, which is either, like I mentioned, NABCB from India or internationally IF system-based accreditation. The next area comes of consultants. You may feel that I'm not competent and my QA manager and my production manager or technical staff is not competent to help me get the certification. So it's important to get a consultant for going forward and to handhold you in the process. But unless you read the standards for yourself, unless you educate yourselves, you will not really get the benefit. I have read the standards myself. I have read the regulations myself in India and internationally. I have educated myself along with my staff, and that has helped our company to become competitive internationally so that we are now one of the top 3 syringe manufacturers in the world globally. So it depends upon your vision and your conviction over there. A longer route sometimes is always a better route, like it was just mentioned. Shortcuts can be long cuts. The timelines, again, are very critical. You have got until October of this year to get your license in case you're making Class A and B medical devices, and until October of next year in case you're making Class C and D medical devices. So if you've not already got your certification, you need to come forward with that fast. Time is running out, because from October, if you don't have the certification, it'll be difficult for you, even though the regulations don't ask for certification, mind you. This is only a stopgap arrangement to show that you have the competency. Finally, the auditors are not going to be coming in from the certification body. They may be coming in on the certification body notified by the regulators. And they'll not be verifying you for ISO 13485. They'll be verifying your compliance to Schedule 5 and Schedule 4 of the MDR. Schedule 4 covers the requirements in terms of technical documentation and in terms of what you need to put forward as tests and verification requirements or risk management to prove that your product quality is good and you've addressed patient safety issues. And Schedule 5 addresses the quality management system requirements. You also need to educate yourself on the various appendixes and the forms which are part of the medical device rules and notifications which have come in subsequently. For example, what is the essential principles? The essential principles has been mentioned in the medical device rules, but the actual details of what is essential principles of patient safety came in by notification much later on. So please get a copy of that and educate yourself on that to be compliant to regulations. This is a means to go forward. So it's important that you prepare yourself well in your organization well. Thank you very much.
All right.
And any questions that you have, you may be sending to PhD or to IMED directly. Our email ID is always available with you. And we will try to address those issues going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rajiv Nath. I must say you have defined quality in the true sense that it could be anything from meeting the regulatory requirement to achieving customers' delight, if I may say. Very important. Then you also again re-emphasized on system-driven techniques over people-driven, because if you want to scale up, then it has to be system-driven. And you touched upon the fake certification and accreditation and the consultations. And a very important thing that you said is that you may get any number of consultants, but you should also read the ISO requirements at least once. That is a must. Thank you. I think these were all very practical terms, and I'm sure that the people have gained a lot of value. Thank you, sir. Rimneet, now do we start with the questions straight away?
Yes, sir. So I have shared with you, so we can,
Sure. I can start.
answer. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first question is by Mr. Vasu Sabarwal of Serbo Surgicals, and he wants to know that for micro enterprises who want to achieve ISO 13485, how can they go about it when a consultant would be charging something like 1 lakh plus 18% GST? So what is the way forward for them? Any of you can answer that. Yeah, please go ahead, Mr. Raj. You have to unmute. Yeah.
Yes. So definitely you can go to IMED's website. You can see over there the list of consultants which we have posted over there who are from the regulatory background. You can reach out to them and you can negotiate with them. Many of the consultants are being part of webinars and giving, I would say, support, which is practically nearly free. They do realize that every small company cannot come forward, and they are being magnanimous in that initial starting point. But let me tell you, don't take it as an expense, take it as an investment. This is going to be giving you return over a period of time. It will help your company to be competitive, will help you to get better value for your products going forward. And if you get regulatory approvals coming forward early, definitely it allows you to be in business and make money. If you operate after October without regulatory approvals, you'll be operating illegally. And that can be more expensive if somebody comes forward and then harasses you from the drug department. So it depends as to how you look at it. But there is no way you can avoid it. We have been telling the regulatory regime and the Ministry of Health that at least for the non-sterile surgical instruments, kindly dilute the requirements to a simple checklist or ISO 9001 and remove ISO 13485, because small companies like less than 10-20 people can be people managed, need not be system driven. So may not be having the approach also for systems when the person himself is the quality manager and the production manager and the owner and the entrepreneur and the sales manager. So, but unfortunately, they have not listened to our plea so far. Tomorrow, if they change, it's something else. But as of now, there is no way around it. Thank you.
Thank you for a very subtle, very briefly and to the point answer. The next question is by Engineer Ritesh Singh, who wants to understand that which standard is applicable on the organizations which are in service of storage of medical devices, including pharmaceuticals, ophthalmology, and medicines.
Well, the same standard, if I could answer, 13485 covers everything in the supply chain of medical devices. So storage, yes, it's a part of 13485. Installation, part of 13485. If you're just doing servicing, again, it's a part of 13485. So all of them can be covered under 13485.
In fact, you have answered the next question also that they were asking is whether the new medical device bill is applicable only to manufacturers or also to importers.
It is applicable to both. If you read the regulation, imports are also very clearly defined in MDR 2017. And as Rajiv sir said that if you have any doubt, you can always approach IMT.
Correct. Okay. And next question is that do we need to take a separate ISO 15197 certificate for glucometer and glucose strips for manufacturing license and for production and for sales? Or the NIB's report should be enough?
Rajiv ji, aap bata rahe hain kya?
I'm not familiar with those standards, but like I mentioned, what the regulator is looking for is compliance to Schedule 4 and Schedule 5.
Yes.
They have not cross-referenced any ISO 13485 or 1511 or any other standard. So basically, Schedule 4 and 5 are required. If you have certification, whether ICMED, ISO 13485 or some other certification, it may help you to demonstrate things in a systemic manner.
Yeah, it can just enhance its capability in the market, that's all. But otherwise, the basic fundamental requirement today is the quality system. Yes, it does say about product compliance in the regulation that if there is an Indian standard, yes, it could comply to that. So right now, what is Rajiv sir said is the right one. 4th and 5th schedule is the basic compliance requirement.
Right. Thank you. Then the next question is that as per ISO 13485, whether the control of documents and control of records can be made digitally in Google Drive instead of a physical copy. Will it be valid?
The ISO 13485 standard does not specify the storage medium in which the documents and records need to be there. It only specifies the requirements in terms of control of documents, how you need to control the documents and records. You can have it digitally, you can have it a paper copy, but whatever it is, the manufacturer need to define that within their quality system and have appropriate methods in which to demonstrate they are meeting to the requirements of control of documents and control of records requirements stated into the standard. So there is no specific thing which is stated whether it needs to be maintained in hard copy or in soft copy. They can do it either way, but they need to define and they need to have the controls appropriately in place to ensure all the requirements of control of documents and control of records given in the standard are met.
Mr. Raji, you want to add?
Yes, I'd like to supplement on that. So yes, electronic record keeping is completely permissible. I would caution on the use of Google-based forms and documents because you need to have a track and trace of every change made in the control documentation system, which may not be possible on a Google form and sheet. There's a dynamic form on the cloud and you are updating that, but you're not keeping track as to who made the change and when the change was made and what was the superseded. The last superseded document over there. So caution on that usage.
Yeah, thank you. Next is a point from Jyoti from EPMD Navi Mumbai. And she says that we are applying for manufacturing license for Class A medical devices on CDSCO site, that is the MD3 form. But they are not able to find procedures to receive challan or where we can pay the fees for this.
So this is definitely being a big bottleneck. That should be part of the FAQ, should be part of the, I would say, the website itself of CDSCO and the MD3, where they are collecting the payment for the other MD forms, I would say, but not for MD3. For MD3, you need to give the payment to your state regulator, to the state regulatory challan system. It can be an online system like Haryana, or it can be an offline system in certain states over there. Once you have paid and you got the copy of the challan payment, that you will submit along with your application onto the online submission that you're doing to the CDSCO website.
Okay, I think very, very clear. And then there is a question from Jaya S regarding microspheres and catheters. both are devices, but could these be produced in same production unit?
Yes, unlike pharmaceutical, which does not allow you to make more than one kind of pharmaceutical product in the same clean room or the same manufacturing facility, in medical devices, being engineering items, the separate regulations were needed, and that's now allows you to do that. So you can make different medical devices in the same facility.
Excellent. And then is a distinct question that under which clause of 13485 that safety of employee, that is the first aid and fire extinguishers and other such things can be covered? Anyone?
Madhavan?
Yeah. You can refer to clause 6.2 of the standard. Though there are no explicit statements related to fire extinguishers and to the safety of employees, it only states the requirements in terms of personal protective requirements for the employees, which are appropriate with respect to the manufacturing line or the manufacturing setup which you have. Say, for example, if you are electronics industry where you handle components, you need to have protective gears given to the employees in terms of ESD protection. In case of implantable products where it needs to be manufactured in clean room, you need to provide personal protective equipment accordingly to which is conducive for the class of the clean room. So that is how the requirements are given. And if you define that the safety gears additionally, whatever it is required for the employee to have a safe and effective functioning of your own manufacturing plant, you can bring in into that, and then you can cover it under clause 6.2.
Excellent. And the final question that I have is that CDSCO does not provide any clear guidance or guideline regarding safety and electromagnetic compliance of active devices, but ISO says so. So how do you navigate such a situation?
See, electromagnetic compatibility is a part of the compliance of medical device so long as it has electronics. To function it accurately and properly, it has to function in an electromagnetically disturbing environment, like we see the MRIs and others, where you can always, every one of us knows that switch off the mobile or keep it away is a big sign in an MRI room, because they interfere with each other. You may get a wrong diagnosis. So don't go by the, whatever is written in CDSC or something, because they are new into devices. Let us all accept that. These things may come
Schedule 4
when they gain the knowledge. Yes, sir.
Schedule 4 defines it.
Schedule 4 defines it, yes. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
For the technical dossier, in Schedule 4 defines what you need to submit over there.
I mean, he's asking specifically on the EMC, so may not be mentioned very clearly there, but it's a part of compliance.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Rimneet, over to you. If there are any questions which are pending with you.
Sir, I have also sent you another file on your WhatsApp. If you can just see query 2.
Okay, there is one more. Let me see.
Yeah.
Okay, it is. I've got it. That's what I was thinking, that how come we either we have explained things so well that people have not any questions. But
I'm sending you one more file as well.
Oh. Okay, now this is a question specially to Satyendra, Mr. Satyendra.
Yes, sir.
And that is, which clause addresses the risk management and mitigation?
Risk management and mitigation is addressed in 13485, and this is basically to be done as per 14971. Now, offhand, I don't remember the clause. Maybe Mahadevan can supplement me. But the whole risk management for any medical device. Now, I am more of an electromedical device guy. So in 60601, which is the mother standard for electromedical devices, the software validation to 62304, risk management 14971, usability engineering, there is again a 62366 standard. All these are covered. So medical certification is not that easy, because it takes care of everything. How good is it to use? We never thought of it before. Now there is a standard on that. So, okay. Mahadevan, you want to add?
Clause 7.1 talks about the risk management and also gives a reference to ISO 1497.
1497.
Apart from that, if we look at the standard, many parts into the standard, it talks about the risk-based approach. So even if you are using a software within your quality system, you need to adopt a risk-based approach in terms of determining the validation needs, risk-based approach in terms of deriving the samples for process validation. So it is across the standard. So specifically, if they want to look at the specific requirement, 7.1 is there, which they can refer to. And if you look at even in supplier controls, there is a risk-based approach which has to be there, supplier risk-based classification of suppliers. So it is across the standard 13485, it is there.
Yeah, thank you. Next is again, Mr. Mahadevan, you are not off the hook.
Yeah, yeah.
So and a very important question. What is the budget required for certification?
Very good question. It all depends. So the favorite answer, which I always say, it all depends. It depends on the device. It depends on the device classification. It depends on the number of employees. It depends on the size of the organization. It depends on the processes involved. So all these things only determines the effort required in terms of the assessment. So based on that, only the cost will be determined. And of course, what is that certification which they are looking for? If they are looking for a CE certificate, it will be different. If they are looking for only 13485, it will be different. So it depends on the need of the customer, and we also need to assess. So that is where that initial information gathering, that is a very key phase in which we'll have to collect those information, and only based on that, the effort can be estimated and a proposal can be worked out.
Okay, thank you. Now another interesting question, that do we need to get our manufacturing facilities in industrial area to get manufacturing certificate just like drug license norms? And also, do sellers of medical devices need commercial space requirements to get licensed to sell medical devices?
I'll clarify on that. So resellers of medical devices, they just need to get themselves registered going forward. We have sought a major deviation from them, which was earlier there in the drug rules. So there is no requirement to keep a fridge. There is no requirement to be there in a legal premises. Seller in a shopping mall or in a Laldura area can also sell medical devices, or even operating from a garage in his home. So it's going to be more flexible going forward. But what is important is to get yourself registered and to have experience in selling medical devices and to follow manufacturer's instructions. So if a manufacturer wants you to have a certain warehousing requirement, certain temperature requirements, for that particular medical device, what you are selling, you have to be allowing traceability, allowing batch controls, and allowing environmental monitoring to comply with the manufacturer's portion guidelines. That's more important.
Correct. Then is a question that are factory license and pollution license mandatory for manufacturing license as per MDR-2017?
These are supplementary regulatory requirements to have approval for a no-objection certificate from a fire department or from the municipal corporation. There are multiple agencies seeking parallelly separate regulatory compliances, but one need not follow the other. One cannot say that I will not get this unless I have that. It can be done in parallel.
Okay. And there is a corollary to the previous question about digital things, which Mr. Rajiv had answered. And that is that does the server need to be validated if the documents related to QMS are maintained digitally in soft copy?
No, it's not required. Basically, we look at the secureness of data and backup of the data. If they can convince the auditing agency, the CB, that it is secure, that's good enough. We don't go and validate the server or things like that. Am I right, Mr. Mahadev?
It has to be a risk-based approach.
Yes, basically.
So the standard facilitates the risk-based approach. It clearly indicates that you need to assess the risk related to the use of any software system within the quality management system, and then derive out a validation plan and validate accordingly. And whenever there are changes to those systems, you need to take again the same risk-based approach and do the validation. So they need to identify clearly what is that software doing with related to their quality system, And based on that, they need to identify the risk and then come up with mitigation actions and then perform validations and demonstrate. That is the requirement which is clearly stated into the standard as well.
Right. I think, Rimneet, now we are done with the questions. And unless there is something which you have further.
Sir, there are queries in file 3 as well.
I have included that.
Sir, I have 2 more queries. I'm just putting in your chat. Or any other, if participants, they want to ask in person, so they can show a raise of hands, so we can unmute them. I have sent, I have put the query in your chat box.
Okay. Okay, so this is the question. That is, if a company A is just manufacturing in India, but not selling in India, then does all the MDR-2017 requirements will be applicable to the company? Especially labeling requirements of putting manufacturing license on labeling and so on.
In last session, Ravikant answered the same question that it is needed. They need a license from the regulator, even though they are not selling in India. Somebody had asked this, if I remember correctly, that was the answer. I think again, Rajivji can supplement.
Yes, they need to do that. And once they have the manufacturing license number, against that, they'll be given a neutral code number. And once they are doing the labeling for any international brand, whether the brand is owned by them or by their foreign buyer, if they're making an OEM for an OEM product under the client's brand name, then the traceability to their manufacturing unit for the regulatory purposes will be through the neutral code number. So the neutral code number basically will be allowing the custom people to trace the origin of the product to their manufacturing site. Tomorrow there is going to be a quality issue or product recall. You have to import back the rejected goods. You don't have to then pay customs duty. You don't have to go through a regulatory review process. You don't need to have an import license. The custom people and the drug controller at the port will allow you to get back that rejected lot based on the traceability that you have on the documentation linked to your neutral code number. So the traceability, and even though the Drug and Cosmetic Act per se does not regulate export of medical devices and drugs, but indirectly by this mechanism they are regulating it. Finally, you have to comply with the regulations of the importing country, but the control mechanism of traceability is being maintained by the regulators in this particular manner, and they're delegating the task to the custom officer to trace it back to you.
Okay, I think that is quite clear.
So
and
we have
now,
query from Jaya Shukla.
Yeah. Sorry, one more question before that. And very basic question. Can you define the term manufacturer? Right? Because a packager and a labeler, for example, of surgical instruments, is that person a manufacturer?
From the purpose of regulations, the regulatory body is treating any activity, any process, whether complete or incomplete, even sterilization. If you do gamma radiation outside a factory under a loan licensing system, even that process of sterilization by you or somebody else as a contracting, or even coating of your product, is a manufacturer. So the regulatory requirement will be looking at from the point of view of control as a manufacturer. But from the point of view of when you sell to GEM to a buyer, then you have to comply with the buyers or the level 1 supplier requirements. Domestic content needs to be 20% or 50%. That is separate under DPIDT. So there are two different things. Let's not mix it up together. So DOP and DPIDT will be seeking Make in India as per 50% domestic content, which may be diluted by the line ministry. But regulator will be checking every part of it, even if you're just a packager or a labeler. And the medical device bill states it specifically. And if you see the new medical devices bill, the draft bill, they also have a definition of the spurious labeling. The spurious labeling will not allow you to label the product if you're not making it yourself. So if you, unlike Europe, where you can be a legal manufacturer, that is not going to be permissible under the new medical devices bill, which is coming forward. You have to be an actual manufacturer to state on your package that I'm a manufacturer. or you have to set up a marketing company.
Okay. One more question which is there, that if a company is importing raw material, say steel forged parts in case of surgical instruments, if they are importing the raw material from another country, do they need to get import license and registration for sense? And what if the foreign company doesn't have an ISO 13485 certification?
So if you're going to be importing a component or the raw material which can be sold as a finished product without any further processing. Suppose I'm importing needles, and the needle is a needle by itself. It can be attached to a syringe, can be attached to an IV set, but it's also a needle by itself. Then I need to have an import license. But if I'm going to be importing stainless steel tubing, which is going to be cut and then to be processed and then assembled, then it's a raw material, then it's not a component. And in that case, I don't need an import license.
Okay. And one more question is that, is there a QMS ERP software available for ISO 13485?
Yes, there are many in the market.
Any names, if you offhand, if you remember?
We don't use, so I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Rimneet, there were some people raising hands.
So Jaya Shukla, you can ask your query, please.
Yes, sir. Good evening. This is very informative session. So I have prepared several. Developed several devices. I'm additional professor in PGI Chandigarh. So I cannot scale up. So I went to several industries so they can manufacture, but they said that if one manufacturer is preparing catheter and all these, which are also medical devices. So he said, I want a written document saying that I can prepare it. Otherwise, the money what he will spend in the manufacturing of my device, that is microsphere, will be wasted. So is there any documentary evidence so that this microsphere is also a device? There is I have a classification product list and the number 47 in page number 153. It said that microspheres, globe, stunt, all these are devices. But I need a document which says that microspheres and the catheter both can be manufactured in same unit.
You're muted.
It's permissible to make the same these two products in the same plant. There is flexibility in unlike the Drug Act or the drug rules, the medical device rules give this flexibility. There is no restriction for doing that. Number one.
But there is no document. Because microspheres is a gray area. They may be drug, they may be devices.
So again, I'll come back to that. So you go back to the basic definition of medical device. If any product is going to be used for a medical application, very simply putting it, it's a medical device. So if a bed is going to be used or a pillow cover is going to be used for medical purposes, it becomes a medical device. The same pillow at your home use or a bed sheet at your home use is not a medical device. But the moment you use it in a hospital and claim it for medical usage, it becomes a medical device. It may be class A, but it becomes a medical device. So,
okay.
The medical sphere you're talking about,
sorry. Okay.
If it's going to be not having any therapeutic action, it's a medical device. If it's going to be a drug which is going to having a therapeutic action, then it's a medicine.
So I have prepared microsphere which carries the radioactive material and to deliver it to the tumor. So what is this? This is a device or a drug?
It can be a drug. Now, again, over here, you have to be very clear what is the main primary purpose of your product. If the main primary purpose of your product is treating tumors, and by this kind of an action, then it can be treated as a drug. But if it is a drug delivery product, which is going to be assisting in delivery of the drug and not be a drug action by itself, then it's a device. So you have to be clear of what is the main purpose. So you have combination products. In case of combination products like a stent,
Drug-inducing.
okay, or you can have a pre-filled syringe. In the case of a pre-filled syringe, the main purpose is the drug. The syringe is only a packaging mode of the drug.
Yes.
But in the case of a stent, the main purpose is to address the coronary issues and to keep the arteries open.
Right, sir. So there
The
is
drug-eluting part is
any
a secondary part
documentation?
of the exercise. So the main primary purpose is what is to be defined. That will help you to define whether it's a device or a drug. And if you still have a confusion, you can write to the drug controller and say that this is a combination product and whether you need to get approval under the MDR or under the drug rules.
Sir, I
They're
have
the right
written
people as
to
regulators to
the
guide you.
DCGI and I got the reply that microspheres are not approved in India. However, in this document, it is already mentioned that microspheres are in, classification of product list says number 47, correct, and it is a classification comes in the D type, but it is a device. So, but the manufacturer says, I want a written document. So from where I get that written document?
No, I think that is good enough for you. If it's specifically mentioned in the classification list, that's good enough for you, number one. Number two, you have to see how your competition is treating it internationally. In USA and in Europe, other manufacturers, if they are making a similar product which is already there in the market, how are they doing it and how it's classified? Once you have an equivalence over there, it's part of your technical file documentation because when you have to first and foremost in your design dossier, define that it's a device. And how do you define it as a device? The second part you have to do is a classification and classification tree and define under which classification you put it over there. So once you give the logic in your technical documentation, that is going to address any regulatory scrutiny.
So one more thing, sir, I am preparing microsphere without any drug, without radioactivity. And this will be manufactured as a cold kit, not as a hot kit, which will be delivered. And this cold kit will be in hospital itself. The radioactivity will be tagged in it, and then it will be delivered to patient. Otherwise,
so it seems to be a drug delivery device. So it seems to be a medical device. What you claim it to be, the drug part will be added later on, which will be the radioactivity part of it. So you don't have to then worry about it. And like you mentioned, it's already there part of the classification list of medical devices. And that should be adequate as part of a documentation to go forward and to seek a license for that by October 2023, if it's a Class D device.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
So we have query from PK Zalpuri. You can ask, please.
That, like we are marketing some products, which is brand leader in Indian market as well. Now this OEM, our OEM wants to come to India and they have all certification done, 13485C and all that. What certification in case we invite them in India and I want to, involve them in Indian activity, like Make in India program, what kind of certificates we need, in that case?
You would still need ISO 13485. You would still need CE marking in case of an import license, or you're going to be buying the product as a component and you're going to be making some part of the production in India. You will have to give supplementary documentation as an add-on to your basic, I would say, supplier certification, so that your own QMS system covers that input. And then you have to only go in for a bridge audit. That reduces your audit costs and your certification costs. But you have to go as part of the whole regulatory process in any case. If it's going to be sold as it is, without any repackaging, relabeling, then you have to come forward in terms of an import license. And if you're going to be doing any processing on that, some assembly of that, and then doing some packaging and sterilization on that, then it will be a manufacturing, I would say, license for you.
That's great. We have already got the import license for this device, and I mean, that way we have already finished that part and we have got the import license. My concern is that, I have seen, a lot of people in the same category, they are, proving that, they have a CE mark and they are not doing any activity in India and they are, participating in GEM and giving wrong declaration. How to answer that, how to address that? Because we have
and as on today's date, it is legal to do that. So it's only after October this year for Class A and B devices, there's going to be restriction for market access, and for Class C and D items, October of next year. Until that period of time, it's completely legally permissible for them to import the goods and to sell them, as long as it's not a fake certification.
No, no, no. My question is different. I'm saying that they are proving that they are making in India. Some, like I tell you, that ventilator. Like they are saying that tubings are here. Some components are here. If that component they are proving that it is from India, how it is CE mark then?
One can have a CE mark. That is not the question. If you are very sure that your competition is not making the product in India, we're digressing from this seminar, but you are allowed under the DOP guideline note, you can study over there. You can file a submission and a claim that this is being done incorrectly. And you have to pay some fees over there as defined in the guidelines of the DOP document and the RPIT document. Based on that, there can be an investigation done to challenge the manufacturer's claim based on your complaint. And in case the manufacturer is found at fault, they're going to be punished. And in case you are at fault, then you will forfeit your fees, which you have put forward for the questioning the claim.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I think you have addressed my part. Thank you so much.
We also have query from Dr. Shankara Narayana.
Yeah. Hi, sir. Thanks for the opportunity, first of all. Yeah. As MDR is telling after May 31st, like ISO is mandatory for applying for the manufacturing license. But as per ISO, for the last audit in ISO, we need 2 months of lot record of manufacturing. So like it is like both needs each other. So how can we address this, sir?
There is a confusion. You had until May 31st as a temporary registration requirement, the need for ISO 13485 certification. Now that deadline is already over.
Yes, sir.
Now you have to go forward for manufacturing license. You can't seek registration anymore. As on today's date, you've got time until class A and B products until October. You have to seek a manufacturing license. The time for registration is now over. So for seeking manufacturing license, you have to show compliance to Schedule 5. And one of the means for doing that is having ISO 13485 certification. But the regulators will be doing a separate audit for verification, and they'll be seeking from the audit report compliance to Schedule 5, not ISO 13485. But ISO 13485 or ICMET 13485, if you have that, will give you the confidence to withstand that regulatory scrutiny.
Okay, so even now ISO 13485 is not mandatory for manufacturing license.
For manufacturing license, no.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
It was a voluntary requirement for registration purpose only.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, okay. There is one question, and that is if a company has ISO 13485 certification in the present name, but the company is changing its name, then is that ISO 13485 still valid, or do they have to do some other action?
They need to notify to their certification body about the company change, name of change of the name of the company with appropriate supporting documents, and with that the certification body where they got the certificate will decide the further activities. Generally, if it is only a name change, it can be done and the new certificate can be issued, and the subsequent in the subsequent audit there could be some follow-up points which the CBs will follow it up onto that. If there is a large significant change, the whole top management is changing, the CB is will to decide whether an assessment is required before effecting the change. But generally, if it is only a name change, it can be done by notification to the CB, and they have their own processes to take care of this.
Yes, same thing for regulatory purposes. You have the question needs to be more precise. Actually, it's a name change or change of constitution of the company.
It is a name change.
The constitution of the company, then in that case, for regulatory purposes, it's a much more cumbersome task for certification body and for regulatory body, because that signifies a change in equity and change in ownership of the company and change in liability of the company. Then you have to satisfy the certification body and the regulatory body in a more detailed manner. A simple name change is more of keeping them informed.
Okay, this gentleman has said it is a constitution change.
Cumbersome task.
Right. One more question very quickly is, how do you return a Class B license?
It's not a question of returning. It is a question of just withdrawing manufacturing and informing the regulator that I'm discontinuing this product, and a cutoff date is announced. So whatever is produced and available in the market, shelf life of the product is informed to the regulator, and whatever is available in the market until the shelf life of the product, he's still liable to the consumer and to the regulator for the quality of the product.
No, actually, there is a slight change. What this gentleman is saying is that they got this certificate from the NOC from CDSCO for manufacturing Class B and Class C. But before that, the state FDA had issued Class B. Now they want to surrender this Class B of the state. So the product is there, continuing, but there are two certifications.
Yes, so that is, it's again a simple thing for a product. In case there's a confusion about classification and a higher classification exists, a regulator will always seek compliance to the higher regulatory requirement. So if it's B and C or B or C, then of course the regulator will seek C, and if the manufacturer doesn't want to challenge that, if he wants to challenge, he has to give proof that in other economies in Europe or USA, it's being treated as B. But if he also agrees that it's going to be C, he simply complies with C requirements, and then of course the C route is different. It is not coming under the state regulatory authority, it's coming under the purview of the central licensing authority.
Okay. And there is one final.
But if he's doing it to escape the state regulator, I will not advise him.
Yeah, and one last question is that a merchant exporter who is doing his own branding, what kind of regulations are there for them in MDR?
He has to, if he's getting the product made under his brand name, he has to get it made under his brand name from a licensed manufacturer, whose manufacturing license number or the neutral code number will be there on the package.
Okay. I think Rimneet, that is done.
We have one query from Shashi Sinha. Last query.
Yeah, my question to Mr. Rajiv Nath, this MD-41 form for the distributors and sellers has not been notified as yet. So what should they do?
Nothing. Relax. You cross the bridge when you come across it. Right now, they are not coming under regulations. There was only a draft notification which came out, which was permitting them just that they have to simply give their name, address, basic requirements to get registered. They don't have to fulfill any QMS requirements, any certification requirements, any tough regulatory requirements to get themselves registered or licensed. So it's not like the drug license system of the trade license system, which was there for the drug license. Simply forget it. And if somebody does have the drug license system, if he wants to hang on to that, the new system will permit him to hang on to that also. So if somebody says, I'm a chemist and I'm selling a medical device, I want to use my drug license, trading license, he can use that activity, or he can just simply go forward for registering himself under the new system. Both will be permissible for ease of doing business. But don't worry about it. Cross the bridge when you reach it.
Thank you.
Mr. K. Kumar, you would like to ask?
Yes, thank you so much for an informative session and for helping the community. Unfortunately, the regulations don't address a company that is neither a manufacturer, neither a reseller. So in cases where the entire product making is outsourced, or a second case where some parts are outsourced and then assembled by the seller using their own brand. So what kind of certification should a company of this kind follow?
I would recommend that you need to seek from your suppliers ISO 1345 certification too. So that is something that you should be seeking. As far as the issue about loan licensing goes, now earlier loan licensing in the drug system, Drug Act and drug rules was different. In medical device rules is different. You can only use a loan license if you already have the manufacturing capacity and you're falling short of capacity. So suppose I'm making syringes, I don't have enough capacity to make syringes. I can go to another licensed manufacturer who makes syringes. He'll make the product for me in my brand name. there'll be a loan licensing agreement. In that case, I will use that licensed manufacturer's spare capacity to augment my requirements. But if I am making orthopedic implants, I'm not making syringes. I cannot go to a syringe manufacturer and say, please give me syringes, and I will be shown as the manufacturer for the syringes. That's not permissible. So loan licensing is going to be something available only to these people with the same product line only. A trader or a reseller without manufacturing it cannot claim to be the manufacturer of the product. In the drug system, it was allowed. In medical device system, that particular loophole which people were misusing for loan licensing has been plugged. Going forward, we expect that change may be coming also in drug rules and drug act in the new bill.
Okay, in case of assembled products, say, 3 parts are, in case of electronics, few parts are outsourced from somewhere else, and then, the manufacturer, or rather the person selling it, is assembling the product and then selling it under his brand name.
Whoever is doing that activity, whether you are doing it or somebody else is doing it on your behalf, needs to have a manufacturing license and needs to be under the MDR regime. Simple as that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think there is just one question which has just now popped up, and that is that reusable surgical instruments are made in Germany are not regulated. Why are they need to be regulated in India? I mean, I don't know if you can answer this, as this would break the supply chain.
Like I mentioned to you earlier, we have sought a diluted system for non-sterile surgical instrumentation, like you mentioned over there. The drug controller and the, even though he understands where we're coming from, and at a personal level, he may be empathetic to our approach, but finally, the decision has to come from DTAB and has to come from the Ministry of Health. And so far, they have not taken a legal stand on that.
Right.
We're trying to convince them. PSG can also support our request on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think Rimneet, we are done.
Yes, sir. We would like to thank all our esteemed panelists for sharing their valuable inputs during the program and answering all the queries of the participants. And we are grateful to our moderator, Colonel Bhargava, for moderating the sessions so well and taking up every query with the panelists. A big thanks to all our participants for very patiently attending our MDR sessions. Special thanks to Mirror Life Sciences Private Limited for sponsoring this event. And I just wanted to inform you, next in the series is on 5th of August, and the topic is validation of medical devices. So we'll be covering what are the requirements under MDR, guidance to industry on validation, how validation is evaluated, and clinical investigations. And we are also thankful to Mr. Anil Johari for guiding us with his valuable inputs for holding this MDR sessions. And special thanks to all the participants. And we look forward to see you in our upcoming sessions as well. Thank you so much.
And I just wish to add one thing. I believe I have never seen the panelists answering a question with such in a focused manner. Very quickly, you have been able to dispose of. So, heartiest congratulations for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. See
Thank you.
Bye.